Good evening everyone. I hope you are doing well. Good evening Nitya, Padmini. I hope my voice is audible to everyone. Please confirm in the chat box if you can listen me. Hello Deepak. Great. So let us begin with the session. Good evening Titanium. So hello everyone, welcome back to another insightful session of Perspective 360 degree where we are going to talk about different current affair based issues and we are going to do answer writing practice on it, and this session is going to help you with respect to the descriptive paper of different competitive exams such as RBI Grade B and NABARD. And so I hope it is clear to you, and today we are going to talk about the RBI draft climate risk disclosure framework, and this disclosure framework was given by RBI in the month of February. Though this disclosure framework is still at draft level, it means that RBI can make different changes to it. It is still open to discussion, but if there are different updates, before your exam get conducted, then we are going to bring that updates to you. But for now, we can talk about the disclosure framework because it will help you to understand a new perspective regarding how the banks get affected by the climate change and how why RBI mandates this bank and provides this climate change risk disclosure framework with respect to that. So we are going to see all these things as a part of this session. And if you're somebody who is new to this Perspective 360 degree initiative, then let me tell you that here firstly we give you an expected question and you have to answer this expected question in the comment box if you want it to get evaluated within 48 hours. So I hope it is clear to you. Now let us see the expected question for today with respect to this topic, which is discuss the major development by Reserve Bank of India's. Okay, sorry. The question is discuss the recent RBI climate risk disclosure framework for banks and financial institutions, highlight its key components and implications for market participants. So this is something what we are going to talk about, where we can easily see the important keywords are firstly it is talking about the climate risk disclosure framework. We have to write different components of this framework, and also we have to discuss the different type of implications that this disclosure is going to have on the market. So I hope it is clear to you. So this is the blueprint that you need to follow while writing your answer in the comment box, and also in the examination where you will divide your answer into introduction, the body, and the conclusion. The introduction, as I always say, should be around 10 to 12% of the total word limit. The same rule applies to the conclusion also, and rest of the word limit should be dedicated to the body part, where you will write your body in the form of different heading and subheadings, and under it you will write your relevant points that you will try to substantiate with the help of relevant data, facts and examples. So I hope it is clear to you. Now let us move on to the first part of our answer, which is the introduction. And for this answer you can write introduction through different ways. What you can do, either you can start from the RBI's disclosure framework. You can directly start from the disclosure framework and you can talk about that what are the different objectives of the disclosure framework. Or what you can do, the another way to write introduction is firstly you can talk something about maybe a one line regarding the climate change and climate risk assessment, and then you can talk about that this keeping in mind this climate change, RBI has launched this disclosure framework and for the different banks and the financial institutions, and you can make other such combinations. So the point is that you can write introductions in a different way, in whatever way you want to write, and then we will evaluate it that that how good you were able to write it. And also what you can do, you can compare your introduction with the introduction of your fellow aspirants. So if I talk about the introduction, so RBI's climate risk disclosure framework is designed to sensitize Indian commercial banks and regulated entities to the importance of climate change risk and integrate this risk into their business and sustainability decisions. So these are the two objectives. I mean, the primary reason why this disclosure framework has been launched by the RBI. So the point is that firstly, it wants to sensitize this, it wants to aware these institutions, and also it wants these institutions to integrate the points that have been mentioned as a part of this framework to their business sustainability decisions. And then this framework aims to enhance transparency and accountability among financial institutions to address climate related risks in a proactive manner. So that is the idea regarding the introduction. Apart from that, what you can do in order to add some more content to the introduction, if you want to, you can also highlight these objectives in a very concise manner, to, and that is to enhance transparency, accountability, and empowering the financial institutions through this disclosure of climate related risk which the RBI has mentioned in its recent framework. So I hope the introduction part is clear to you, how you can design it, and you can, as I told you, you can write it in different manner. Now after the introduction, what we have the body part where we are going to talk about the different key components related to this disclosure framework, the what are the different components with respect to it. So when we talk about the different components, so the first component is regarding the disclosure requirements that this framework talks about. So as per this frameworks, banks and regulated entities must disclose climate related physical and transition risk. Now what do you mean by this physical and transition risk? Now physical risk means the risk related to climate change, for example the extreme weather events such as the flooding, the droughts, then the different type of other activities, for example the storms, heat waves, all such type of things. Now whenever these extreme climate events will happen, what they will lead to, they will lead to increase in the damage with respect to the property, the life, and also the infrastructure. Now when this property, life, and when this damage of property, life, and infrastructure will happen, what it is going to do, it is going to increase the risk of default of different individuals and businessmen. And when these people will become defaulter, the point is that when these people will suffer this damage, and if these are those people who have taken loans from the bank, if they have taken credit from the bank, then it will increase their risk of getting default. And when their risk of getting default will increase, it is going to also lead to increase the risk of NPAs in the bank. So are you able to understand how the banking sector is connected to the climate also? So that is the reason why RBI has specified this disclosure framework with respect to the climate change, with the framework, the guidelines which the banks need to follow. So this is the first point. The second risk that has been highlighted as a part of this framework is the transition risk. Now transition risk means if any country or any society shifts towards low carbon economy. Now when any countries or a society shifts towards a low carbon economy, what is going to happen? There are different changes that are going to happen in that society. What kind of changes? For example, there can be political and legal changes. What type of political and legal changes? For example, there can be different legislations that can be passed by that country in order to promote the renewable energy sector. renewable energy sector. Different type of changes are going to happen, different type of shifts are going to happen, because that country or that economy wants to get converted into a low carbon economy. Other type of shifts may also happen. For example, shifts related to the market changes. What might happen? Because that certain country or that certain society wants to get shifted to a low carbon economy, then the people who are a part of that society, it could be possible that those people also start moving towards the those type of products that are coming from the renewable energy sources. They may avoid those type of products that are harmful for the environment or are pollutant in nature. What this has got to do with the banks? The thing is that when certain type of political and legal type of changes when come in that country, and such a certain type of market changes will come in the country, to whom it is going to impact primarily. It is going to primarily impact those companies who are not involved in the renewable energy business. Who can be those companies? For example, the companies in the power sector who are heavily involved on the coal energy. Different type of companies can be there. So when the whole society and the country will start moving or shifting towards a low carbon economy, what will happen? These are the type of companies who are going to suffer. And when these type of companies are going to get suffer and their risk of getting default will get increased, then what will happen? Again, the same scenario that I told you in the physical risk also, it is going to increase. It is going to increase the risk of increase in the NPAs of bank, because of the different policy changes, because of the different technological changes, because the company that do not adopt, let us say the country, the government mandates that companies have to adopt so and so clean energy technology for so and so purpose. But what if certain companies are not able to adopt that? They are going to lag behind, and such type of factors cumulatively, what they lead to? They lead to increase is the risk of the defaulters, and that is going to increase the NPAs of the bank. I hope you are able to get a clear picture how the banking sector is linked to the climate change and why this framework has been launched. So this is something that the RBI has said, that banks and regulated entities must disclose climate related physical and the transition risk. It means the physical risk that the individuals and businesses who have taken loan from the bank they might face, and also the transition risk, those entities who are very much vulnerable to the different type of shifts and transition that are happening in the economy with respect to the clean energy. So this is something has been said. For instance, what has been specified in the report, the RBI has proposed that from financial year 2025 to 26, banks and financial institutions in India must have a standard disclosure framework in place for climate related risks. There had to be standard disclosure framework. And if I show you the example of the transition risk, so you can see that RBI write off bad loans worth rupees 1.63 lakh crore in 5 years. Alok India and Bhushan Steel top defaulters, and these two companies are what? I mean, there could be other factors also behind why this company became defaulter, but the one of those factors is these companies are coal. They are involved in coal related business. They are highly dependent on the coal energy. So so you can see one of the example of that. Also, if you see the different type of notifications and the articles written by the RBI, this is an article I have taken from the RBI's website, and in this article, if you want to read it, you can go through it for once. It is an interesting article that shows very close relationship between the banking and the climate. But this articles show this chart also with respect to lending to coal fired thermal power plants versus renewable. So if you can see this blue portion in the graph, this is related to the coal fired thermal power plants, whereas the orange is for the renewable ones. Now if you analyze this chart, this chart shows that after the 2017, the lending with respect to coal fired thermal power plants has decreased. You can see that earlier it was around 60,000, then below 10,000, then it got further decreased, then it got increased. But if you see with respect to the renewable energy sector, you can see the lending has increased, because and what is the reason behind this? The reason is the transition risk with respect to our economy. Our company is now has started shifting towards the low carbon economy, and this is the impact of this, that banks are also preferring to give loans mostly to these type of sectors, so that the risk of getting default gets reduced. I hope the picture is clear to you. Now you have understood the basic idea behind this whole framework. All other points are easy to understand. So this point was something that is the crux of all the points. But let us go through the frameworks. I mean the different key components with respect to the framework. So, for example, the framework requires banks to implement a strong risk management systems and process to assess the impact of climate related changes. So, what it is telling, it is telling the banks to implement a strong risk management system. So, different type of risk management system where the banks can perform scenario based analysis. What do you mean by scenario based analysis? Scenario based analysis means to explore hypothetical situations. What type of hypothetical situations? For example, with respect to the different type of businesses, that if the situation changes tomorrow, then what is the chance that what type of businesses have the highest chance of getting affected because of those type of changes in the economy with respect to environment. So such type of hypothetical situations are considered, and these hypothetical situations help the banks to take proactive risk management decisions, proactive risk assessment. And also, this will help the banks to promote sustainable lending practices. So if I show you the example, I have taken this from the ICICI Bank's website. So ICICI Bank has this climate risk management framework, and this it aims to involve assessment of impact of climate change on banks' own operations, then climate change management of the bank's loan book, then integration of material climate risk into existing risk management framework, and this gets periodically reviewed, and is it means it is adaptive in nature. So this is the strong risk management system that the framework is talking about with respect to the banks and the financial institutions. The next point is regarding governance and strategy. Pretty much easy point to understand, where the banks must have structures and processes for board and management oversight. The point is that so that there is more transparency in the decision making, and these boards and management oversight, they need to cover the actual and potential risk of climate risk on their business strategy and financial planning. So whatever risk is there, they need to talk about the risk, they need to declare that risk. For example, the banks should form specific committees, and they should integrate climate risk into their governance framework, so that strategic decisions can be made and more informed decision can be made with respect to this whole idea of climate risk management with respect to banking sector. I hope it is clear to you. The next point is regarding the metrics and targets. So what does the framework talks about the metrics and target? The banks are expected to specify the metrics and objectives. They need to specify their targets, they need to specify their aims, their metrics used to assess, monitor and manage climate related risk. So what does it talk about? It talks about that banks must consider direct, which is scope 1, and indirect, which is scope 2 emissions in their climate risk assessment. Now these two terms, scope 1 and scope 2, are technical terms. What does it mean? Scope 1 terms are those terms, these are direct greenhouse emissions from sources owned or controlled by the banks. For example, let us say bank provide different type of services, bank uses different type of infrastructure. For example, bank also uses different type of vehicles that are used for day-to-day proceedings. Banks in the infrastructure, banks what can they use? Banks can use different type of heating systems in their offices. They can use ACs, air conditioners, different type of things that they use. Now the point is that how much greenhouse gas emission is happening through these infrastructures that are controlled by the bank. So these first-handed emissions, the direct emissions by the bank, they are known as the scope 1 emissions, which are the direct emissions that are being emitted directly by the bank. When we talk about the scope 2 emissions mean the indirect emissions. For example, let us say the bank is using electricity in their as a part of their infrastructure system. Now what is the source of the electricity? From which company the bank is purchasing this electricity? I mean, from which power plant this electricity is generating? Now, is this power plant generating the energy through renewable source, or it is generating energy from coal energy? So different type of factors. So if this bank is consuming electricity from this coal energy based power plant, then what does it mean? Bank is promoting some sort of indirect greenhouse emissions. And this is something that the report talks about, that banks need to consider all these things by specifying the different metrics, different numbers, and also their objectives. So this also includes measuring carbon intensity, all such type of things as a part of their target. The next is the stakeholder engagement. Who are the stakeholders with respect to the banks? When we talk about the climate change, all those people who are affected with respect to the decision making of the bank when we talk about the climate change. For example, the customers, they can be the different investors, they can be different regulators who are regulating the bank, then the employees of the bank, they can be the NGOs also, all those entities who have interest in the bank's climate risk assessment practices. Because let us say if there is a certain bank, for example SBI, just a hypothetical example, and for example, if this certain bank is not practicing climate risk management practices, and you are somebody who is an investor in this bank, and it is a matter of concern to you that wherever I am investing, that bank should follow the sustainable lending practices. But if the SBI is not following these practices, what you will do, if you are concerned about that issue, you may take your investment back. You must stop investing in that certain bank. So that is the idea, because you are interested in the bank's risk management practices. So this is something that the framework talks about, that the bank needs to be fully transparent, and the disclosures with respect to the decision making should be approved by the bank's board and should involve engagement with the stakeholders, so that there is effective understanding of the bank's climate risk assessment. And this will also reflect the bank's true exposure to the climate risk, that how much the bank is following the guidelines with respect to the climate risk. So that is the idea. Now the next part is regarding implications on the market with respect to the climate change. I forgot to change the heading, so I will change it when I will upload the PDF in the Telegram channel. So the heading will be implications on market because of this framework. So what is going to be the implication of market? For the first thing that we have already discussed, that it is going to increase the transparency of banks exposure. The everybody, the different stakeholders will be in a better position to understand that how much the bank is following the different guidelines with respect to the climate risk management. Then the enhanced market discipline, it is going to set the benchmark in the market and is going to encourage the market discipline and promote better risk management practices among the banks. So if the different banks are following it, so other new banks or the small banks can also look up to these banks who are following these kind of practices, and they can also inculcate or integrate it as a part of their whole proceedings. The next point is regarding improved ESG performance. What are ESG performance? ESG performance means, ESG stands for environment, social, and the governance performance. Now what is this type of performance? So these are the type of performance, these are the different type of parameters on the basis of which banks get ratings. So there are different ESG rating companies who give rating to the different type of banks, and if the banks are promoting the good practices with respect to the environment parameters, the social parameters, the governance parameters. For example, what can be in the environment parameter? Environment parameter can be, for example, the carbon footprint with respect to the bank. For example, just I showed you the example with respect to the bank, how the direct type of emissions, which is the scope 1 type of emissions, which reflects what? It reflects the carbon footprint with respect to banks. Then the waste management, then the pollution, all such type of things. I mean, these are not only for banks but the other entities also, but I'm just giving you an idea that what type of different parameters there can be. These ESG rating performance frameworks can be used for the other institutions also, so I'm just giving you a general overview. Then regarding the S factor, which is a social, for example the labor practices, then there can be human rights, then also the product safety standards, different type of service safety standards, all such type of things as far as the social parameters are concerned. Then also the governance parameters, for example the board diversity, are the people from the different diverse background are included in the board or not, how many women are the member of the board, all such type of things. Then are the employees involved in the decision making of that certain institution or not, so how to what extent the employees are involved, so all such type of governance parameters, all such things are done, and on the basis of these parameters the banks are given the ratings. Now if a certain bank has good rating, then what it is going to do, if you are a certain investor, then if you will see that yes, this bank is going good at the level of environment, social and governance, and more specifically environment, because our discussion is primarily oriented towards the climate risk management and the disclosure norms with respect to climate. So if you are somebody who is very much concerned about the environment, then if you see the ESG ratings of the banks are good, then you are going to invest in the bank, and it is also going to increase the reputation of the bank with respect to the risk mitigation, and that is the idea, and customers and investors are more likely to engage with banks and will be more trust and loyal with respect to that certain type of bank. So that is the idea regarding the ESG ratings. The next is the informed decision making, which I have already told you, very much linked to the transparency. If there is transparency and accountability with respect to the decisions making of the bank, then the investors and the different type of stakeholders, they will be able to take the informed decisions. The last point is regarding integration of climate risks. So banks integrating climate risk into the risk management frameworks are better equipped to handle the financial impact and climate related events. If you remember what we had discussed in the first point, that if the different type of stakeholders who have taken the loans from the bank, if they have faced certain type of loss either with respect to the physical risk or the transition risk, and it increases, what it does, it increases the risk of their becoming a defaulter, and this eventually increases the risk of the NPAs of the bank. But if the banks are handling the different type of climate risk management procedures in a right manner, then what it will do, it will help the banks to deal with such type of risk. It will help the bank to mitigate the loss that can come with because of such type of risk. So this is something that has been that is another impact on the market. So again, I'm going to change this heading when we will upload the PDF, so I hope this is also clear to you. Now lastly, the conclusion. So what can be the conclusion with respect to it? Okay, I'm sorry, I forgot to add the conclusion over here. I think I had written it somewhere else, but I forgot to write it here. But what you can write as a part of your conclusion, we can write it right now, since the question is asking about the RBI's climate risk disclosure framework. So you can write about that the climate change is one of the important concerns that affect the financial stability of the banks. So what the banks need to do, you can also, so what you can say, what first you have written, you have rephrased what have you mentioned in the question, then you can say that RBI has taken different measures with respect to the banks. For example, this disclosure framework that we are talking about, so that banks can adapt such type of changes in order to maintain the financial sustainability, and can practice good lending and can follow good lending sustainable lending practices. And then what you can write at the end, you can write the way forward, that what banks need to do in the future as a part of their sustainable lending practices and the financial management. So you can write a small way forward with respect to it. What I will do when I will upload the PPT, I will add the conclusion over here with respect to this answer. So I hope it is fine for now. Lastly, this is the question, the answer of which you have to write in the comment box within 400 words, and the 10 marker within 48 hours. I hope the session was helpful for you. And before that, the EduTap blog, where you can find different type of articles with respect to different range of competitive exams, that will definitely help you in your preparation. So let me just go through the chat box if there is something. Yes, Rishabh, it is definitely possible if you'll follow. I mean, if you have a well-defined plan, if you have certain type of strategy, then you can definitely clear it. I won't say that it is impossible. It is possible. it depends on your preparation level also, how much you have prepared before that, all such type of things. So there cannot be one answer, Rishabh. Uh, I mean, the answer would vary from person to person. So I don't know to what extent you have already prepared for the exam. So then only I can answer your question. It's a short session today. Yes, it is a short session because of the topic. I mean, whatever there was. A part of explanation I have already explained that. Rest of the things were very much easy to understand, and I don't think it's a short session. The session is of 34 to 35 minutes, and usually our session lasts for 30 to 35 minutes only. But I hope the session was helpful for you. So on Monday, what I'm going to do, on Monday we are going to cover the financial stability report. This is something that we are going to cover on Monday, or we can do it on Friday also. We will try to do it on Friday. My schedule is a bit tight these days. That's why there was some sort of irregularity uh, regarding the conduction of classes because of the overlap. Because the timings are getting overlapped with my live classes, and that is the reason. But I will make sure that on either on Friday or Monday we will start doing the financial stability report also. So I hope that's fine. So now we are done with the session and I'm ending it. Thank you so much and all the best.